Welcome back to Three's In. Bubbo's settling in with you this morning. So, in my last presentation, I told you a little bit about Mary Edward Wersch's book, Military Brats Legacies of Childhood Inside the Fortress. And I spent the majority of my time talking about the introduction by Pat Conroy. And toward the end of his introduction, he kind of talked about recognition of service for these children, these kids, these military brats, and kind of left it at that. Well, I picked up on that and sent an email to my U.S. Congressman, Bob Latta at the time, and asked him if he would be willing to introduce legislation to the Congress for such recognition, for the sacrifices, the commitment, the service of military kids to our nation. And within 45 minutes or so, I got a reply from his office. It surprised the hell out of me, really, and wanting to know a little bit more about my idea. So we started a conversation. That was in December 2009. And in March of 2010, to his credit, Representative Latta did introduce legislation. It was called the Children of Military Service Members Commemorative Lapel Pin Act. And it was H.R. 5333. Okay. Had to play a little bit of politics, I guess. I hate that word. But anyway, we couldn't call it the Military Brats Commemorative Lapel Pin because there's a lot of blowback against the term brats. Oh, get over it. Go make a key lime pie and leave us alone. Anyway, I'm not picking on key lime pies, okay? It's just something that came to me, okay? So, we went with children of military service members. And I got some blowback on that too. But anyway, well, he did introduce that legislation, but it didn't really go anywhere. It got some recognition and some acknowledgments, but not a lot. See, Bob Latta at that time, this I think was his first term in Congress, so he was way down there on in the food chain. So I went back at him the next year and stayed on it. And again, to his credit, he introduced the same legislation again. And the idea was to create this lapel pin. I initially came up with the thought of a medal, not necessarily a medal you wear on official military uniform. That's governed by a whole set of regulations itself, but something that these kids would recognize. Well, we couldn't do that either. There were some rules against that. They came back and suggested maybe a badge, and I said, badges? You got to be kidding. We don't want no stinking badges. So then the idea of a lapel pin came up, and we all went along with that. That would be fine. That's the way that kind of morphed. Don't want no stinking badges. Okay. So the second time it gained some sponsors, but not a lot. And then it kind of just flooded out. Well, a year went by, and I just said, you know what, this is starting to really annoy me. So I went back at Bob, and he introduced it a third time. Well, the third time, it kind of, well, there's Latta and his brat, or military kids, whatever it is, legislation again. Okay, fine. And it went away. Well, then I had the opportunity to attend a dining in down at the 560th Flying Training Squadron one year. And at that dining in, they had Two-Star that was the guest speaker that evening. And his father had been a POW, General Lengel. General Lengel was the speaker. His father, Laurie Lengel, had been the POW. And that night, Laurie was there along with two of his sons, who both were general officers. And I think one of his grandsons that was in pilot training at the time up at Shepherd. So that was really quite impressive. At any rate, General Lengel, as he was speaking, he said that when his dad had been shot down, the blue car came up to the house, and we all knew what that meant when the blue car comes to the house. In those days, Air Force staff cars were blue, and they watched their commander, the wing commander, I imagine, the squadron commander, and also the chaplain get out and come up to the house. And you know immediately what that's all about. And General Lengel went on to say he was 7 years old at that day, and he remembers them telling him that their dad had been shot down, but they didn't know whether he was hurt or killed or a POW. They didn't know anything about it. And for the next 2 years, he said he was the man of the house at 7 years old. And stepped up and took charge of the household, as many American kids would. I don't sell American kids short by any stretch, but at any rate, I sat there and listened to him talk, and all I could think of was, damn, these kids deserve this recognition. What in the world's wrong with this Congress? And it's something that Congress could have come together and supported in a bipartisan manner, if you will. There's so much that divides us, but supporting military kids was something that I thought could bring everybody together, and I still do. At any rate, it was introduced the third time, and it just kind of died on the vine. I attempted to keep it in the forefront by doing a series of interviews on radio and a couple on TV. And during one of the interviews, I was talking about the legislation and about the lapel pin and about the resistance I was getting. I was also getting some resistance from the brat community about, well, we don't know if we need recognition or not. I'm not going to get that deep into it. I think we do, and I would love to see the Congress come forth and recognize these kids, and that's all there is to it. I reached out to USAA. Well, they didn't like the term military brats. They just ignored me. I reached out to a couple other entities. Same thing. I didn't know that word brats was such a term. I look at it as a term of endearment. I'm proud of being a brat. Okay, so there in White House, Ohio, one afternoon doing an interview, the man looked at me. He kind of stopped the flow of the interview, and he said, well, Bob, he says, why don't you do it yourself? Damn, you got a point. So I got to thinking, okay, if I was going to do it myself, create a lapel pin, what are the elements of the pin, and how would I do it? So I started looking for pin manufacturers, and it didn't take this. They're not hard to find. Just go on YouTube or on Google and type in pin manufacturers. Got a ton of them. And then I thought about the design. Well, at that time, I was in conversation with a few other brats that did support the idea, and we were tossing back and forth different ideas. The official flower of the military child is the dandelion, and I'll probably just say that here and then get into that in another presentation later on. So I wanted to incorporate the dandelion on the pin, and that's kind of what I did. And then to honor our parents, what I did is put a dog tag chain as the border of the pin for the security and safety that growing up on military bases, military installations, provided for us during our childhoods. And it also was a way of recognizing our parents. So, as in so many of my threads here, that theme of honor keeps coming through this thing. That was my way of honoring my parents for the life they gave me as a kid. So that's the way the Bratpin came about. And it really took off in the beginning stages. I sold a ton of them. But I never wanted to go into it with profit in mind. I wanted to create a 501c3 is what I really wanted to do. Boy, was I in way over my head with that one. Holy crap. I got my clock cleaned on that one. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as I get into the mechanics of the Bratpin here later on. Suffice to say, that's the way it all came about. And I'll leave it with, I still think there is a calling to recognize the children that we have that serve as military brats. I still believe there is um, a calling for that. I'm not sure how to do it yet, but I won't. I don't think I'll ever give up on that idea because military brats are just phenomenal individuals, and I think they do deserve recognition. So with that, that's Bobo Bass Gear Stop.